Welcome to the TExES 391 Core Subjects EC6 online test prep course covering subject exam number 1, English Language Arts and Reading, test number 901. The course is presented by Teacher Preps, your trusted source to help you pass your teacher certification exam. Thanks so much for being here. Let's get started. As you can recall from the NES and Texas Education Agency Administration website, the Texas Core Subjects 391 ELAR reading exam has a total of 10 competencies. In this lesson, we'll cover competency number 7, which reads, "The teacher understands the conventions of writing in English and provides instruction that helps students develop proficiency in applying writing conventions." The key word that the whole competency is about is writing conventions, which are the rules and guidelines that we adhere to when writing in English, such as spelling, grammar, pronunciation, and more. Okay, great. I think we've got a good start. Let's jump into the learnings by reading statement number 1. And this reads, "The beginning teacher understands that many students go through predictable stages in acquiring writing conventions, for example, physical and cognitive processes involved in word, writing, sentence construction, spelling, pronunciation, grammatical expression, and that individual students vary in their rates of development of those conventions." After reading this, I see that the key point here is understanding the stages in acquiring writing conventions. If you're ready, let's jump straight into the learnings of this lesson. Our first objective here is to better understand the predictable stages students undergo in acquiring writing conventions with an emphasis on physical developments influencing this process. Introduction to writing conventions. Remember, let's start with the definition. Writing conventions refers to the standardized rules and guidelines in writing that ensure clarity, coherence, and communication effectiveness, such as spelling, pronunciation, grammar, capitalization, sentence structure, paragraphing, and word usage. Predictable stages in writing conventions. Acquisition. The first stage here is called emergent writing stage, and this is when students begin to understand that writing is a form of communication. Scribbling may evolve into more recognizable letters and eventually into words. Some grasp the basic pronunciations and capitalizations, although it's inconsistent. Our next stage in writing is the acquisition of transitional writing. This stage is demonstrated when there is increasing awareness of spelling patterns and phonetic rules. The sentence structures become more varied here, and the student attempts to use different types of pronunciation, though not always accurately. And here, the student begins paragraphing, often by topic or idea. The next writing stage is called the fluent writing stage, where we can see that students have reached this stage by the following indicators. The student demonstrates a more consistent grasp of grammar rules and sentence structure, uses varied vocabulary and more complex sentence structures, understands the nuances of pronunciation and its impact on meaning. Capitalization rules are mostly mastered. Now that we've had a good refresher of the predictable stages in writing conventions and acquisition, let's move to our next topic in this standard, which is understanding the physical developments and their impacts on writing convention acquisition. There are three main branches in this area that you'll want to be on the lookout for your exam, and these include fine motor skills development, which we see as the ability to grasp a pencil and manipulate it. Brain development, as the brain matures, so does its ability to process complex tasks like sentence construction, pronunciation usage, and paragraph organization. And then visual processing, which is the improved ability to distinguish between letters, words, and pronunciation. This helps in the recognition of spelling patterns and pronunciation norms. Let us not forget that in our exam, the standard has also asked us to understand cognitive development on writing convention acquisition. Starting at the beginning, recall that cognitive development refers to the brain's growth and the evolution of thinking skills over time. This development influences a student's ability to understand and apply writing conventions. For your exam, you'll want to remember these four processes. First, cognitive process that impacts writing convention acquisition is memory. As short term and long term memory improves, students can remember and apply writing rules more effectively. Second is attention span. Longer attention spans allow for extended periods of writing, facilitating practice and refinement of writing conventions. Next, we have logical reasoning. As logical reasoning skills develop, students better understand the structure of sentences and paragraphs. And lastly, there is metacognition. This is recognizing one's own thinking process, and this can help the students self correct and refine their writing over time. Now that we have a firm background knowledge about the stages and processes that students go through to learning writing, let's move to the heart of this lesson, which is writing conventions. Writing conventions serve as the guidelines that make writing standardized and comprehensible for everyone. Key aspects that you'll want to know include word writing, sentence construction, spelling, pronunciation, grammatical expression. Furthermore, note that our exam standard states that we must have an understanding about individual students and how their rates will vary in the development of these conventions. So let's cover that now. Individual variation in development. Remember these aspects for your exam. Varied paces. While many students follow the stages, the time spent in each stage varies. Some may grasp certain conventions faster than others. Now, a student might excel in sentence construction, but may struggle with spelling or vice versa, and this could be the different strengths between students. Socioeconomic background, exposure to literature, parental involvement, and more can influence rates of development. These are our external influences. Now, building off of this knowledge, we'll next cover supporting diverse learners. Starting with differentiated instruction. Remember, this is tailoring teaching strategies to meet the individual needs, ensuring that all students in the classroom grasp the conventions despite their varied paces. Now we have regular assessments. To track progress and to identify areas of struggle, we regularly assess our students to check how they're doing. Engaging in peer review. This allows students to learn from each other and notice different strengths and weaknesses between peers. Now we have utilizing technology, and this is when we use tools like grammar checkers that can aid in understanding and help our students master the conventions. Great. Moving straight into our next descriptive statement inside competency number 7. This reads, the beginning teacher provides spelling instruction and gives students opportunities to use and develop spelling skills in the context of meaningful written expression, such as commonly confused terms, simple and complex contractions. In other words, the beginning teacher teaches students how to spell correctly and lets them practice spelling within real writing situations. If you're ready, let's jump into this lesson and make sure you are fully prepared for exam day. Effective instruction to bolster students' writing skills and the importance of spelling for children are crucial topics in educational studies. Now, let's look at the effective instruction to aid students' writing skills. The first instructional strategy that you'll want to be on the lookout for your exam when you come across an answer is modeling and direct instruction. Teachers should model good writing practices by writing in front of students, discussing their thought process, and breaking down the different components of writing. Next instructional strategy is the use of writing prompts. This is where we provide a thought-provoking prompt which can stimulate creativity and guide our students toward a specific writing goal. Another strategy here is to set clear objectives. Outlining clear goals for each writing task helps students understand what is expected of them. Next, let's get you prepared for your exam all about contextual spelling instruction. When taking your test, you will likely come across at least one question that wants you to demonstrate your understanding knowledge about meaningful written expression, which is when a teacher integrates spelling lessons within an actual writing task rather than isolated drills. So, if the exam asks what the advantage of meaningful written expression is, look for an answer that shares the advantage of this spelling instruction, which is that it helps students see the practical use of correct spelling and understand its impact on clarity and meaning. Here we have practical activities for classroom implementation. Many of the multiple choice questions on your exam that you'll encounter will provide real life situations where you'll be asked how we can effectively support our students. Be on the lookout for answers that include these activities as they work well for teaching a variety of writing conventions that meet the needs of all of our learners. First, we have spelling journals. Encourage students to keep a record of challenging words, commonly confused terms, and new contractions that they encounter. The next strategy is to use peer editing. This allows students to review each other's work, focusing on spelling. And then there is spelling in context. Provide short paragraphs with spelling errors and have students identify and correct them. This helps them apply their spelling knowledge in a real world context. And finally, we have where students create their contractions, a fun activity where students combine words to create real or imaginary contractions and then use them in sentences. Now we're moving straight into the third descriptive statement inside competency number 7, which states the beginning teacher selects and uses instructional strategies, materials, and hands-on activities for developing graphomotor skills necessary for writing according to grade level expectations in the TExES Essential Knowledge and Skills for grades 4 through 6. Now, broken down, what this means is that we need to make sure we understand how to choose teaching methods and materials to help our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders improve their handwriting and written skills as per the TExES Essential Knowledge and Skills guidelines. Let's make sure you are fully prepped for test day and jump into this lesson now. To begin, let's acknowledge that developing graphomotor skills, which relates to the fine motor movements needed in handwriting, is essential for grades 4 through 6. To begin, let's acknowledge that developing graphomotor skills, which relate to the fine motor movements needed for handwriting, is essential for our students in grades 4 through 6. So let's have a look at how to select instructional strategies, materials, and activities for our students. Start by evaluating your students' needs. Before selecting strategies, evaluate your students' current abilities. Some students may still be struggling with the basics, while others may need advanced techniques. Your exam will pose questions around these topics, so ensure that the answer that you select always takes into account a diverse set of learners, including students with disabilities or different learning preferences. Follow these general yet essential guidelines when designing instructional strategies. First, explicit instruction. Clearly explain and model how to form letters, use correct spacing, and apply adequate pressure. Use demonstrations on whiteboards or document cameras. Next, let's make sure your instruction uses guided practice. After introducing a concept, guide students in practicing it. Gradually release responsibility as they gain confidence, which, as we can recall from our past lessons, this is called the gradual release of responsibility, which is transitioning the responsibility of learning from the teacher to the students over time. And this happens when the teacher models the correct way to directly complete the task at hand. Then the teacher invites the students to help the teacher complete the next task, And then finally, the teacher releases the responsibility of demonstrating the understanding of the skill being taught to the students. Next, we always want to make sure to provide feedback to our students. Regularly review students' handwriting, offer specific and constructive feedback to them. Next, we can also use peer review. This encourages students to review each other's work and allows them to learn from each other. Finally, try to incorporate technology. Utilize apps or software that provide handwriting practice or tutorials. All right, great. Let's keep those instructional strategies in mind for test day. Now, let's jump to the materials for developing graphomotor skills for our students. We can keep this simple. Think pencils and pens. Use ones with grips to help students with their ability to hold the pen or pencil. Some prefer mechanical pencils as they provide consistent lines. Next material is paper. Remember, use lined paper for guidance. Consider raised line paper for tactile feedback. Next, we have workbooks. Choose grade level handwriting workbooks to provide structured practice. Then we have our whiteboards. These allow for easy correction and can be fun for students. Letter formation cards are where the student shows the correct formation of letters and numbers on a card. Now, to exceed on exam day, you'll have to be knowledgeable at choosing and applying the right tools and materials to support students' handwriting abilities. Thank you very much for watching this section. In this lesson, you'll learn everything about Competency 7 for the fourth descriptive statement, which reads, the beginning teacher selects and uses instructional strategies, materials, and activities to help students use English writing conventions like grammar, capitalization, and punctuation in connected discourse. In other words, for your exam, we need to make sure that we understand how to pick and use teaching methods and materials to help students properly use grammar, capital letters, and punctuation when writing full sentences or paragraphs. Without further ado, let's jump into this exciting lesson. In the realm of teaching English language arts, we cannot overlook the significance of mastering the conventions of writing. These conventions include grammar, punctuation, and capitalization, and they form the foundation of coherent and compelling written communication. In order to learn how to meet the needs of this exam standard, you're going to want to walk through the actual strategies, materials, and activities of real lessons that would help students achieve the use of English writing conventions in connected discourse. If you're ready, let's do this together. Beginning with teaching a grammar lesson. We're going to call this grammar story chain. Our materials will include index cards with specific grammar rules based on lesson needs, student journals, pens or pencils. Now, let's talk about how you might create a grammar activity with these materials. The activity is to begin with discourse, use the importance of sentences or paragraphs in a text with the students, and then elicit answers from what they already know. Next, hand out one index card for each student. This card will have a specific grammar rule or English writing convention that they must adhere to in their writing. They shouldn't reveal the rule to their friends sitting next to them. And then start the story. Write the beginning sentence of a story on the board. It should be open-ended to allow for various directions in the narrative. Then ask the first student to add a sentence to the story, ensuring that they adhere to the grammar rule on their picked card. Move on to the next student to continue the story, and so on and so forth. Now we have peer review. After a few rounds, or when the story reaches a natural pause, ask the students to swap their writing with their neighbors. Each student should try to identify the grammar rule or convention that their friend was using. Discussion. Don't forget to discuss what the students have just done. Go over the story sentences as a class. Discuss the grammar rules applied and how they helped or sometimes challenged the flow of the narrative. Encourage students to share any sentences that they found particularly effective or, interestingly, difficult for them to understand or create. Then, depending on class size and time, you can start a new story or continue the existing one, possibly rotating grammar cards for added challenge. End the lesson with reflection on using the importance of using proper grammar in maintaining the flow and clarity of a sentence or any piece of writing. This activity fosters creativity, collaborative storytelling, and the practical application of grammar rules within the context of creating a coherent and connected narrative. Notice here how whether you're teaching grammar, capitalization, punctuation, or other English writing conventions, this instructional strategy could be applied and would be considered a successful lesson for the following reasons. We selected and used instructional strategies, materials, and activities to help students use English writing conventions. Next, the framework included is setup, introduction, mechanics, checking, a conclusion, and a reflection. Excellent. In this next lesson, we'll be covering the fifth description statement. Inside competency number 7, this one reads, the beginning teacher recognizes the similarities and differences between spoken and written English, such as syntax, vocabulary choice, and audience, and uses instructional strategies to help students apply English writing conventions and enhance their own writing. Great. Now, when I pause to break this apart, the meaning of this lesson that I noticed are these key words: spoken and written. Now, in this lesson, it's going to be our job to understand how speaking and writing in English can differ, and then know how to teach our students to use the proper writing rules in order to improve their own writing. If you're feeling nervous about this exam, don't sweat a thing. I've got a detailed plan for you. Let's start now. Spoken versus written English. An educator, a teacher, must recognize that while spoken English might tolerate slang and informal ways of speaking, written English, especially in academic and formal contexts, adheres to stricter conventions. Syntax in written English is often more complex, vocabulary choice may be more sophisticated, and one often writes for a broader audience than speaks to. Now, as a teacher, you're going to need a plan. So here's what we recommend. Strategies for effective instruction. We're going to use contrastive analysis by engaging our students in side by side comparisons of spoken versus written samples, and then ask them to identify the differences that they see and discuss with partners next to them. Next, you're also going to want to use interactive writing exercises in order to encourage students to transform informal spoken phrases into formal written sentences. This not only helps them to recognize the differences, but also allows them to practice the conventions of spoken English. Another strategy for recognizing the similarities and differences between spoken and written English is audience awareness activities. Here we want to craft activities where the students must adhere their written language based on varying audience types. For instance, writing a message to a friend versus conveying that same type of message to the principal. Next, we have error analysis that you can use as a strategy for effective instruction. In this case, look at some samples of students' writing and highlight spots where they've used casual, spoken style English where it doesn't quite fit. Remember, it's all about learning, so let's approach this in a positive way. Moving straight into our sixth lesson, covering competency number 7, this descriptive statement reads, the beginning teacher knows writing conventions and appropriate writing grammar and usage and provides students with direct instruction and structured practice in those areas. Simply put, for your exam, you're going to want to know how to teach students writing conventions. That is what this entire exam competency is all about, and we'll continue building off of the previous lessons that we've already learned to make sure you're totally prepped for test day. Let's get started. Regarding conventions of English in writing, remember that the cornerstone of proficient writing lies in understanding and effectively applying the conventions of English language. These conventions encompass the accepted standards and rules related to grammar, punctuation, and sentence structure, as well as usage. Starting with an overview of the conventions of English, here we're looking at grammar, which is the structure of language. Next, we have subject-verb agreement, which means the subject and the verb in a sentence must agree in number. Remember, singular or plural. Let's look at a couple of examples. The first is incorrect. The dogs runs fast. And the second is correct. The dogs run fast. So we can think about this and teach it to our students so they know the correct grammar usage. Now let's have a quick look at verb tenses, where the verb in a sentence should be in the appropriate tense to convey when an action took place. Some examples include I walked, I walk, I will walk. So we've got past, present, and future. Next, we have the use of proper noun and pronoun. These are people, places, things, or ideas. We could also have pronouns which replace nouns such as he, she, it, and they. So, for example, the incorrect version would be Mary lost Mary's books. We don't say that, but the correct version would be Mary lost her book. Grammatical errors are often found in students at every level. Next, we'll explore common mistakes students often make and how to fix them. Knowing these will give you a great advantage for your exam. Number one, present and past tense. In English, we use different tenses to convey a message about the past, present, or future. The four tense forms in English are as follows. We have present simple, like I play, present continuous, I am playing, present perfect, I have played, and present perfect continuous, I have been playing. Some of the rules that you're going to want to remember. We have the past tense to discuss experiences, stories, and events that have already finished. An example, when I was a young child, I played at the park, all in the past. Now we have our writing grammatical errors. First are adverbs. Adverbs are qualifying verbs, and the example we have here is Stephen shook his book angrily. Next, your versus your. Your and your are homophones that often cause problems for students. Rules here, your means possession, Y-O-U-R. Now the example is this your basketball? Versus your, Y-O-U apostrophe R-E is short for you are. And the example is you're very good at playing basketball. And the rule, of course, is if you can put in you are as opposed to your, then it works. The next common grammatical error is there versus there versus there. Once again, tricky homophones. Rules, there to refer to a place that isn't here. For example, over there. Let's go over there. And then use there, T-H-E-I-R, to refer to how someone owns something, showing that something belongs to another person. For example, their breakfast includes so much food. T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E is shortened for they are. The example is they're going to the party tonight, right? You may receive common word usage errors while taking your exam. Here is a set of 10 of the most common word usage errors in English. Knowing this will level up your chances of passing any questions about grammar on your exam. Common errors in word usage. We're going to be reading the sentences here. Susan offered her advice. Bill will advise his son to become a teacher. The strong wind will affect the baseball game. The movie had a powerful effect on me. We were all ready to go. By the time we got to the party, everyone had already left. Why don't you stay a while? It will be a while until the line is shorter. Can a beaver swim? May I use your pencil? Know these differences. And let's continue. Other common errors in word usage, we have her shoes complimented her dress. His boss complimented his new blue shoes. Even after his fall, he remained conscious. Jason could never steal because his conscience keeps him from doing the wrong thing. These are my everyday sunglasses. I wear these sunglasses every day while going to work. The ice cream tasted very good. She makes ice cream very well. The cat is playing with its favorite toy. She likes the hike because it's a challenge. Now we have common errors in punctuation. First, starting with apostrophes, when you want a plural, just add S. Billy owes Jane $5. When you want to show possession, use an apostrophe. Bill's $5 is gone because Jane took it. Commas are next, used in a list and to separate a sentence. My favorite colors are red, comma, blue, comma, and yellow. She went to the store, comma, but now she's at home. Now we have semicolons used to separate two independent clauses. I ate eggs for breakfast, however, I cooked the eggs too long. Here are our next errors in punctuation. We have colon. This is used as an independent clause to call attention to the words after it. For example, I bought groceries, colon, eggs, comma, milk, comma, and a can of beans. Then we have quotation marks used to show dialogue. Ending punctuation marks stay inside the quotation. Remember, that's a super common error. For example, mom said, comma, quotation mark, you better brush your teeth, exclamation mark, end of quotation mark. And remember, the first letter inside the quotation marks is capitalized. In this case, that is the letter Y for you. As you begin your career, you'll realize that you will work with many non native English speakers, and understanding grammar will give you the skills to better support people from all backgrounds. This is subject, verb, and predicate. A sentence includes three main parts. Remember, the subject, the verb, and a predicate. The subject is whom the sentence is all about. In this case, let's call this person Kelly. The verb is the action in the sentence. So Kelly runs. Runs is the verb. The predicate tells something about the subject. Kelly runs where? On the beach. Kelly runs on the beach. Now we have nouns, verbs, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, and prepositions. A noun is a person, place, or thing. For example, Mrs. Smith, the park, a chair. Verb is an action word. Walk, run, sing. Next, we have a pronoun. That is a word used in place of a noun. She, he, they, it. Now we have sentence structures. For the test, know these three types of sentence structures: simple, compound, and complex. A simple sentence contains one independent clause and no dependent clauses. For example, I started early. A compound sentence is a sentence with at least two independent clauses, but it does not require a dependent clause. For example, I started late, comma, but I left early. I might choose to accept or decline your offer, semicolon. These are my options. Or she forgot her book at home, semicolon, however, comma, she finished the homework before class started. Now we have complex. This is a sentence that includes one or more dependent clauses, which we can also call subordinate clauses. I would like to visit Paris, but am afraid that I'll never return if I go. He could not go on vacation because he did not have enough money. Even if she earned more from her job, she would continue to bike to work. Now we have declarative sentences used to declare, I'm going to the store. So you state it. And then you have interrogative sentences. These are used to ask a question. The root is interrogate. Are you going to the store? Then imperative. This tells someone to do something. Please go to the store. Then we have to exclaim, used to express excitement. Wow, that's a really cool store. Remember, when it comes to providing instruction, always use the gradual release of responsibility technique. Look for this strategy on your exam. This means I do, we do, you do. Now that you've got a great background information for all of this, know the instructional strategies, and understand the materials needed, it's my job now to equip you with some awesome student activities to apply these skills. Be on the lookout for similar activities for your exam so you can choose the correct answers. Now, let's continue. Our first activity is a grammar scavenger hunt. The materials you're going to want are books, newspapers or magazines, and highlighters. This is especially excellent for kinesthetic and visual learners. So hint, hint, if there's something about kinesthetic or visual learners on your exam and something about a grammar scavenger hunt, pick this one. All right, activity is give students a list of grammar items to find, for example, a compound sentence, a proper noun, a verb in past tense, and place them around the room. The students should scour through the provided materials and highlight when they find an example. This gets them moving, searching, and interacting with real life texts and their friends. Next example we have is sentence building relay, really good for kinesthetic and auditory learners. The materials we'll use are strips of paper with words and a bell or a buzzer. Activity here is to divide the class into small teams. Each team gets a set of word strips, and one member from each team will run up, grab a word strip, and try to start forming a correct sentence. Teammates can shout out suggestions, and the first team to correctly build their sentence rings the bell. Next, we have grammar charades. This works great with kinesthetic and visual learners. Materials here are cards with grammar, terms, and concepts on them. For example, adjective, exclamation, or question. The activity is when the students draw a card and act it out without saying a word, while the rest of the class guesses what it is. For example, a student draws question, and the student might look puzzled and mimic writing a question on the paper. Excellent. Moving straight into our seventh and final lesson to cover competency 7, this descriptive statement states the beginning teacher selects and uses instructional strategies, materials, and activities to teach correct pencil grip. Holding the pencil right is a first step for kids to write smoothly, and it's a basic part of understanding English writing rules, like what's covered in Competency 7 on your exam. Teachers really need to know these writing basics, and how to hold a pencil is a big part of it. So let's cover this instruction now. You might receive an exam question that asks you why correct pencil grip is important. And if you do, be prepared to look for an answer that includes that correct pencil grip is important because it facilitates fluid writing and less fatigue, prevents hand cramps, aids in the development of fine motor skills, and enhances handwriting legibility. Next, let's move to instructional strategies to teach correct pencil grip. And our first strategy is verbal instructions and demonstrations. Always show students the grip and explain it step by step. For some, seeing and hearing the instructions will be enough. Next, use guided practice. Assist students manually, reshaping their grip until they get a good feel for it. Remember also to use peer reviews. Students can partner up to check each other's grip. They like doing this, working with a partner and finding a friend. They can give feedback based on what you've taught them. Now, in conclusion, consistent check-ins frequently check students' grips, especially during writing tasks, and offer corrective feedback, positive corrective feedback as needed.